I think this is the best off-road power meter currently on the market, the Assioma PRO MX. It's specifically designed for off-road use like mountain bike, gravel and cyclocross. I've tested these over the past 12 months and this is what I think. So last year, I searched a power meter that would be reliable and durable enough for my gravel and mountain bike races. And this can get expensive fast. Buying a power meter for every single bike? I tried putting a road bike power meter on a gravel bike or on a mountain bike, but the compatibility of these things is just a nightmare.
It doesn't fit.
Maybe not for power pedals, they will fit, but those will have other issues. This year I shifted to more off-road racing with the Cape Epic and the World Championship Gravel as my main goals. So during the winter, I did many hours on the mountain bike to adapt to this different position and riding style. And as an amateur, as every amateur, training time is limited. And with my goals being at the highest amateur level, my sessions must be as efficient as possible. And that's where a reliable power meter comes in. I have been using the Assioma road pedals for a couple of years now, and although they will fit on my gravel bike or mountain bike crank,
Road pedals on a mountain bike is possible, but definitely not a good idea for Cape Epic.
so I started searching the options: a crank-based power meter, a spindle-based power meter, or pedal-based power meters.
I don't like wasting money, so before I start buying new power meters, I want to try out the stuff I already have. I've had this crank-based power meter on my Ultegra crank for years, and I use that in my bike in Los Angeles. And since like 4 years, I've had it here in Holland on my gravel bike, which I use to tow the kids. But the crank-based power meter the crank is 175 millimeters, but now I'm using 172 or 170 mil on all my other bikes. So the crank is kind of useless. Then I have this. This is a spindle-based power meter. I can use it, but also the crank is 175 mil, so I have to change the crank. The spindle, maybe I can use this on mountain bike, but I've checked and this is a different spindle than whatever works with mountain bike cranksets. So it's also not compatible.
I just had to buy something new. Of course, they are available for mountain bike cranks and bottom brackets, but buying multiple new cranksets or spindle-based power meters was going to be expensive at about 800 to 1500 euro per bike. And then for 2 or 3 bikes, that would be around 2 to 4K. And yes, I know this is a luxury problem. I have a lot of bikes, but you know, if you have a gravel bike and a mountain bike, then you'll have similar issues. But there's a solution. Since I had great experience with the Assioma road pedals, a mountain bike specific pedal-based power meter seemed to be a great option. And at that time, we're looking at over a year ago, the options I found were Garmin, Look and SRM mountain bike pedals. With the Garmin being the cheapest at about 1,000 euros, and then the SRM the most expensive for 1,500 euros for a dual-sided unit. Then I had seen one other dodgy hack online. It required swapping the pedal body of the Assioma power meter, the road-based power meter, with SPD pedals. But I definitely don't recommend it. I use the Assioma road pedals for gravel and even easy mountain bike rides, but I realized that the road version aren't designed for off-road use, and exposing the power pod, which is on the power meter, to pedal strikes and flying rocks can cause serious damage. So definitely not the way I wanted to go for my races.
Meanwhile.
So while still searching, I got word from Verkuijl that they be launching off-road pedals somewhere in 2024. So I held off buying anything. Since I'm an official partner with Assioma, I received an early set of the Pro MX2 dual-sided power meters way before the official launch. And this was perfect timing for the Cape Epic in March. So here's some info on these pedals before we dive into my experience and what I think about them and some of the issues I actually experienced over the 12 months that I used them. The key features of this pedal, the number one, is the most important one, and that's the shock-proof design. On contrary to some other brand pedals, all the electronics are inside the spindle, inside the axle, which is stainless steel, so super strong. And the pedal body is made out of 6061 T6 aluminum. Important is that there's no electronics in the pedal body and it's very easily replaceable. Number two is that these are the lightest dual-sided off-road pedals on the market with 191.4 grams to be exact. Third point is that these do EAF-based power calculations, which stands for instantaneous angular velocity. So not all power meters will take the differences in your angular velocity into account, but Assioma does. I'll put a link down below if you want to read more about that. Then another point is the automatic temperature compensation. This is very handy when you ride to different temperatures. For example, when you're climbing on a mountain. And this will compensate the measurement for these changes in temperature. Then there's just the very, very high accuracy. It's 1% accurate up to 3000 watts.
Well, good luck with that.
Unfortunately, I can't produce those numbers, but the pedal can. It's got a built-in rechargeable battery and it's lasting for 60 hours. The battery is also inside this spindle and it's welded all into the electronics, so it's not vulnerable to battery-related power dropouts or water damage since there's no external battery covers or connectors whatsoever. Then the last thing, it's Shimano SPD compatible with an asterisk, but I'll get back to that later. So my experience, I've tried and tested these pedals off-road and on-road for the past year. Mountain bike, gravel bike, road bike. I can 100% back up the fact that these are built very strong and are able to withstand pedal strikes and flying rocks. As I've seen plenty of those during my Cape Epic in South Africa. Also, the clip mechanism is designed to shed out debris, so it doesn't cause any difficulty clipping in when you're riding in muddy conditions, because this is a very open design. The power measurement has been super stable and reliable. I just never have any dropouts during training or races, unlike my old crank-based power meters. Riding with power on my mountain bike really makes a big difference, especially since I spend a lot of hours on the road just to reach the trails that I go for my training on these big endurance sessions. It helped me stay in the right training zones and it gets me a clear picture of my power output on the trails. I haven't done a side-by-side comparison to other power meters, but guys like DC Rainmaker, they show that these pedals are super consistent and accurate. So I swapped these pedals in between my mountain bike, my gravel racer, and even my old steel gravel bike, which I used to tow my kids in the trailer. The Pro MX are mounted with a 15mm spanner, since the axle is completely full with all the electronics. So there's no space for this internal Allen key like most other pedals, but they're just as easy to mount, it just requires a different tool. Being able to mount these pedals on different bikes is really a game changer, especially since I often train on rental bikes when I'm traveling for work. Although I think road cleats offer slightly more stability, and in general a set of road pedals and shoes will be lighter than off-road pedals and shoes, the Pro MX pedals will work fine on a road bike. I tried them on a trip where I rode my gravel bike one day and then I rented a road bike the next day. I didn't want to take 2 sets of pedals and 2 sets of shoes, so I just went with the Pro MX. One big benefit is the ability to walk on off-road shoes.
Yep. It seemed like this road's going to turn into tarmac and not too far. I think it's the safest option to walk there, then change the tube, to save my only tube I had. Great day on the bike. Yes, 15 minutes of walking. We're back on the tarmac.
Charging, it's super straightforward with these magnetic connectors, just like the road pedals. The indicator light would tell if they're charged, and typically I get like 3 to 5 weeks of use before I need to charge them again. During the Cape Epic, I did bring my charger and my cable, but I didn't need it at all. I have had a low power pop-up on my head unit while I was racing. I forgot to charge them before the race, but luckily they will keep going for a few more hours, so it wasn't a problem. I could finish the race, I get all the data, and then I just charge it afterwards. The crank length and the calibration can be done through the app or on your head unit in the same way as the road pedals. It's only needed once after a reinstallation. And there's also other features you can see in the app, like pedal efficiency, torque effectiveness, and all these different metrics. To be honest, I haven't used this at all, and I just look at my power on the head unit while I'm training. The pedal bodies are super easy to replace. And they're much cheaper than, for example, the Garmin pedals, which have all the electronics inside the pedal body. Every single product will have downsides. But for the Pro MX, I have to be very, very picky to find one. I'm sure some of you may have reasons to avoid a pedal-based power meter in the first place, but honestly, I can't think of any downside while using the Assiomas. Other power meters, other power pedals can be either less reliable or much more expensive, but the Pro MX isn't. In fact, it's the most affordable option that I found, priced at about 450 euros for a single and 750 euros for a dual-sided power meter. That's around 200 euros cheaper than the Garmin Rally and half of the price of the SRM pedals. And also it's cheaper than many of the crank or spindle-based power meters. And you need only one. One for multiple bikes. Something you can never have with a crank or a spindle-based power meter. But I did have one small issue. Listen.
Almost on the last summit. And then mostly downhill.
There was a squeaky noise. I started noticing it, and at first I thought it was the cleats. The Pro MX pedals are SPD compatible, but, and here's the asterisk I mentioned, only with the SMSH51 Shimano cleats, which Favero nicely includes in the box when you receive them. I had other cleats already on my shoes. These were the SH52s, and I didn't bother changing them as they seemed to work fine. Even during the entire Cape Epic, I had no issues. Although they're not officially compatible, they still work. Just don't tell Assioma I said that. I tried swapping these cleats to the 51 and I didn't notice much difference, and also the noise stayed. After Cape Epic, I discovered the real source. This dust ring, it's made of a piece of plastic and then a metal ring, and it tends to collect a bit of dirt, or it gets dry. And when it touches your shoe and rotates, that's when it starts squeaking. So I contacted Assioma. Their response was due to degreasing detergents during a bike wash. You can wash out the lube. And their recommendation was to lube the dust ring, and they even sent me a video explaining how to do that. I followed the instructions, but the sound came back fairly quick. So I took apart this whole pedal, I cleaned out the dust ring, and then I properly re-greased it. And this was super easy. Just 2 bolts and the side of the pedal, and the whole pedal body just slides off.
Taking this out. This is the one that's making the noise.
This was a very good chance for me to check out the seals and the bearings that are inside. You know, some dust had gotten past the outer cap, but the needle bearings inside the pedal were perfectly clean and nicely lubricated, showing no dirt has passed beyond the inner seals. Cleaning and re-greasing the dust ring resolved the noise issue entirely. And to be honest, that's the only downside I have experienced with these pedals over the past year. So look no further. This is a reliable power meter for road, gravel and mountain bike that's actually cheaper, lighter and more durable than the rest of the market. Mountain bike and gravel racing will definitely be on my calendar, so stay tuned, subscribe to the channel and click here if you want to see these pedals and myself in action, what we had to go through during the Cape Epic.